Right now, your heart may feel heavy with a peculiar kind of homesickness, not for a place you once visited, but for the version of yourself you remember being before the seasons of your life shifted and left you standing in the cooling air of who you are today. You are perhaps feeling the ache of a ghost limb, reaching back toward an identity, a purpose, or a sense of ease that no longer fits, like trying to pull on a coat that has grown too small while the winter continues to deepen around you. It is a quiet, hollow sadness, the sensation of walking through your own life and noticing that the scenery has changed, while your inner landscape is still mourning the loss of the view you once had. You are exhausted because you have been trying to keep the leaves of last year from falling, believing that if you could just hold them tightly enough, you would somehow prevent the winter from arriving. You are lying in your space tonight, and perhaps the room is filled with the faint metallic scent of rain on dry stone, or the smell of tea cooling in a ceramic mug that has lost its warmth. The textures around you are simple: the slight friction of woven fabric against your skin, the cool surface of the wall, the way the shadows in the corner stretch and deepen in the dim amber light of a distant street lamp. The world outside is moving through its own cycle, the trees shedding what they no longer need, the earth preparing to pull its energy deep into its roots, the air growing crisp and unyielding. There is no urgency in this cycle. The trees do not panic as their branches go bare, and the forest floor does not apologize for the debris that collects beneath the boughs. Here, in this sanctuary, there is no need for you to be anything other than what the present moment allows. You are not broken because you grieve for the person you used to be, nor is it a sign of failure that you find it difficult to let go of the identities that have served you in the past. This is simply the friction of growth, a transition that feels like loss, because your mind is still clinging to the old leaves, hoping they might bloom again. Tonight, we will not force your mind to be silent. We will learn how to stop being the one who rakes the courtyard to keep the past from showing. We will not try to defeat your grief. We will learn how to let it settle into the earth, where it can finally become the nourishment for the person you are actually becoming. You are safe enough to soften. You are safe enough to let the dead things fall. You do not have to solve your whole life tonight. Consider this paradox. The very effort you expend to keep your past self alive is the thing that prevents your present self from fully waking up. You believe that if you let go of who you were, you will disappear. But the truth is that you are only ever becoming. The sorrow you feel is not a failure of character. It is a failure of resistance. You are trying to stand in the way of your own winter. You are trying to convince the branches to keep holding on to leaves that have already finished their task. The surprising insight here is that you do not need to be the person you were yesterday to be complete today. Your true nature is not the leaf, nor is it the branch. It is the living, resilient tree that remains, capable of enduring the cold and waiting for the eventual, inevitable return of the light. Maybe you have felt this too. The moment you realize you are mourning your own progress, grieving the loss of a version of you that was perhaps less wise, less tired, but certainly less real than the person lying here tonight. You think that by staying tethered to that ghost, you are remaining authentic, but you are only keeping yourself in a cage of memory. You are holding on to a version of you that could not possibly handle the challenges you have already overcome, and yet you treat that past version as the standard for your current value. We are going to step into the courtyard of an old temple tonight, where the autumn has truly arrived, and where the wisdom is not in the raking of the ground, but in the allowing of the fall. You do not need to organize your memories or justify your losses. You are allowed to be, for these hours, someone who is simply shedding the weight, someone who is finally giving themselves permission to change. You have been doing the work of a gardener who refuses to let the season turn, constantly clearing the path, constantly gathering the remnants, constantly trying to force the garden to look exactly as it did in the height of summer. It is no wonder your spirit feels so brittle. It is no wonder that your chest feels tight, as if you are holding your breath while waiting for the garden to somehow stop its natural descent. But nothing is required of you now. The earth does not ask for your help in preparing for sleep. The frost does not need your permission to settle on the grass. You are part of this cycle, not the one who must oversee it. You are the tree, and the tree is allowed to rest, even when it is bare. In the moments ahead, we will follow the story of a young monk who spent his days in a frantic effort to keep his temple courtyard pristine, terrified that a single fallen leaf would signal the decay of his practice. We will explore how his struggle to control the garden became the very thing that blinded him to the beauty of the harvest. But for now, just let the sensation of the room come to you. Notice the weight of the air, the gentle, rhythmic rising and falling of your breath, and the way the shadows seem to tuck you in, shielding you from the need to perform, to produce, or to be anyone. You are not required to be a scholar of your own history. You are only required to be a human being, resting in the season that is currently yours. If it feels right, notice the way your body wants to let go. Maybe your hands, which have been holding the invisible rake of your thoughts, can finally rest, palms open, feeling the cool, empty space of the bed. Maybe your back, which has been stiffened by the desire to keep your old life standing, can finally arch, relax, and spread into the comfort of the mattress. You are not abandoning your memories, you are simply acknowledging that for this time, the garden can be left alone. The leaves are allowed to fall. The ground is allowed to receive them. There is only the soft, deep, and utterly welcoming silence of the season. You are safe enough to stop. You are safe enough to let the definition of who you were dissolve into the soil of who you are. You are safe enough to be undone. You do not need to know where you are in the cycle of your life, because you are already where you need to be. Here, in the stillness, in the safety of your own breath, and in the presence of a night that asks for no harvest, you have traveled far in your mind today, dear friend. You have walked through the forests of your own past, clutching the leaves you were afraid to lose. But here, in this quiet, you have finally arrived at the edge of the clearing, where the wind is gentle and the ground is deep. Just breathe, just feel, and let the rest come to you. In a secluded mountain temple surrounded by a vast ancient forest, there lived a young monk named Kaito, who had been tasked with the care of the temple's inner courtyard. It was a space of exquisite beauty, enclosed by high stone walls and paved with smooth, slate tiles that felt cool to the touch even in the heat of midday. Every autumn, as the maples that arched over the walls began their slow, inevitable surrender, the courtyard would be blanketed in a vibrant tapestry of crimson gold and burnt orange. For the other monks, the changing of the seasons was a time of reflection and quiet grace. For Kaito, it was a time of mounting, frantic dread. Kaito believed that the temple's serenity depended entirely on the perfection of his work. He was convinced that if a single leaf were allowed to decay upon the slate, or if the paths were permitted to look cluttered, the spiritual discipline of the entire monastery would begin to fray. He carried a heavy, rusted iron rake with a long ashwood handle, a tool that had been used by generations of temple keepers before him. The rake was not merely a tool, it was the anchor of his anxiety. He spent his days in a state of hypervigilance, his ears tuned to the soft, rhythmic crinkle hush of a leaf landing on the stone, his eyes scanning the courtyard with the intensity of a soldier guarding a gate. He moved through the garden like a man chasing ghosts. As soon as he cleared a section of the path, he would turn his back, only to hear the faint skitter of another leaf tumbling from the canopy. He would rush to retrieve it, his breath short, his shoulders pulled tight against his ears, his mind already calculating how many more would fall by sunset. He was not sweeping the garden, he was fighting the autumn. He was fighting the very process of the world, as it prepared to turn inward for the winter. He felt that if he could only keep the courtyard perfectly bare, he could hold back the passage of time, preserve the perfection of his youth, and keep the changes of his own life from ever touching him. One particularly crisp afternoon, the wind grew restless. It whistled through the high boughs of the maples, and leaves began to descend in a steady, relentless stream. Kaito was working himself into a feverish state, his hands raw from the ashwood handle, his feet shuffling in a frantic, unceasing dance. He was raking the same square of slate over and over, his movements jagged and devoid of any flow. He looked to any observer like a man trying to empty the ocean with a sieve. At the edge of the courtyard stood an old temple gardener named Hoshiko. Hoshiko was a woman of few words, known for her ability to sit for hours by the koi pond without ever reaching for a tool. She watched Kaito for a long time, her face as still as the stone walls themselves. She did not approach him while he was in his state of motion. She waited until the shadows had lengthened and the wind had finally quieted into the hush of twilight. When Kaito finally paused, his chest heaving, his eyes burning with the effort of his vigil, Hoshiko stepped out from the shade of a pine tree. She walked toward him, her footsteps silent on the damp slate. She did not look at the leaves that still littered the corners of the courtyard. She looked at Kaito's hands, which were clenched so tightly around the rusted iron of the rake that his knuckles were white. "The wind is very busy today," she said, her voice carrying the dry, rasping quality of autumn itself. Kaito looked at the courtyard, then at his rake, his face etched with exhaustion. "They will not stop," he whispered, as if confessing a failure of monumental proportions. "Every time I clear a space, the garden fills again. I have been at this since dawn, and the path is still covered." Hoshiko walked over to a small stone pedestal where a single perfect maple leaf lay. Having drifted down and come to rest on its own, she did not pick it up to dispose of it. She simply bent down and looked at it, the evening light catching the veins of the leaf, revealing a delicate structure of decay and beauty. "Do you think the maples are unhappy because they are losing their leaves?" she asked. Kaito blinked, his grip on the rake loosening just a fraction. "They are just trees, Hoshiko. They don't have to keep a garden perfect." "But you are not a tree," she replied, her eyes finally meeting his, "and yet, you treat your own life as if it were a temple courtyard that must never show the signs of a season. You think that by raking the past into a neat pile, you are keeping your spirit clean, but look." She reached out and took the rake from his hands. Kaito felt a momentary spike of panic, a physical sensation of falling as the tool left his fingers. It felt as though he were suddenly exposed, stripped of his only defense against the inevitable. Hoshiko set the rake down in the grass, not against the stone. She did not lean it against the wall, where it could be easily grabbed. She placed it flat on the earth, where it would be covered by the coming frost. "When you rake, you seek to preserve a moment that has already passed," she said, gesturing to the courtyard, which was now blanketed in a thick, beautiful layer of amber leaves. "The courtyard is not meant to be empty. It is meant to be itself. And you, Kaito, were not meant to be a machine that tidies the world. You are meant to be a person who walks through it." Kaito looked at the rake, lying abandoned on the grass. He felt a wave of dizziness, the familiar, terrified urge to pick it up and resume the struggle. His mind was already cataloging the mess, already creating the mental diagram of how long it would take to finish if he started again right now, but he stopped. He looked at Hoshiko, then at the leaf on the stone pedestal, and then at the way the light played across the untidy, abundant beauty of the fallen leaves. He realized, with a quiet, jarring impact, that the sky hadn't fallen. The world hadn't ended because the slate was covered. He wasn't lesser because he wasn't working. He was simply present. The internal sensation of failing to keep the garden clean began to soften, replaced by a strange, hollow, and surprisingly spacious feeling. It was the feeling of a weight being put down, of a door swinging open after years of being locked from the inside. He didn't become a master of the garden in that moment. He didn't suddenly understand all the mysteries of the universe. He did something much smaller and infinitely more significant. He chose not to reach for the rake. He chose to stand in the mess, to breathe in the scent of the damp, decaying leaves, and to acknowledge that he was tired. He was so tired. Hoshiko reached out and gently rested her hand on his shoulder. "The soil needs the leaves," she said. "If you take them all away, the earth becomes hungry. You have been starving yourself for a long time, Kaito. Let the leaves lie where they fall. They have finished their work on the branch. Let them finish their work on the ground." Kaito stood there as the blue light of evening deepened, listening to the silence of the courtyard. He could feel the cold biting at his skin, and for the first time he didn't try to calculate the temperature or predict when the storm would come. He just felt the cold. He was a person, shivering in an autumn garden, and it was enough. The garden was untidy, the paths were hidden, and the temple was no longer perfect. But as he watched the evening light retreat, he felt a flicker of something he hadn't realized was missing. The ability to be present without needing to prove he was worthy of the space he occupied. He didn't go back to the rake. He turned toward the temple hall, his movements slow, his limbs feeling heavy and real. He left the courtyard to the wind, the maples, and the natural, unhurried cycle of the season. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, or how he would navigate the days when the snows arrived. But for the first time in his life, he didn't feel the need to know. He was walking, simply walking, and the path was wide enough for him to exist. This is the shift that often feels like a collapse, when it is actually a release. We have all been Kaito, standing in the courtyard of our own lives, rake in hand, terrified that if we stop, everything will be ruined. We believe that if we stop raking, we are being lazy, or we are failing, or we are losing our grip on the sanctity of our existence. But the beauty of the Zen teaching here is that you were never the one responsible for the falling leaves. You were just the one who thought you had to gather them. And tonight, you are invited to consider the possibility that your life, with all its mess, all its changes, and all its falling leaves, is already beautiful enough. It does not need you to tidy it to be worthy of your presence. You are allowed to stand in the clearing, and you are allowed to rest, even while the garden takes its own natural and necessary course. This story is not suggesting that you should lack concern for the direction of your days, nor does it ask you to become indifferent to the history you carry or the losses you have weathered. It is not a call to become cold or to turn away from the very real challenges of your own life. It is showing us something much quieter and perhaps more vital for your peace of mind. The monk's suffering did not begin because he cared for the temple or because he felt the weight of tradition. His suffering began the moment he decided that the courtyard was a failure if it were not perfectly bare, and that he alone was responsible for keeping the seasons from turning. He had conflated his identity with his work, believing that if the leaves were not neatly gathered, the world and he within it would drift into chaos. Buddhist wisdom suggests that we often treat our internal experience like Kaito treated his courtyard. We believe that if we can just clear away every anxiety, if we can just label every difficult impulse and hide away every evidence of our own aging or change, we will finally be allowed to find rest. We think that peace is a reward for finishing the work of being perfectly composed or fully resolved. But the lesson here is that you are not the gardener, and you are certainly not the rake. You are the courtyard itself, the vast, wild, and ever-changing reality that remains long after the autumn has finished its work. Think about how often you have felt that same internal demand to clear away a feeling before you can allow yourself to experience it. When you feel a surge of grief or a sudden unexplained fear, do you not reach for that mental tool, desperate to find the origin point, to sweep it into a neat pile, and to hide it from your own sight? This is what we call the second wound. The first wound is simply the life that happens, the uncertainty, the inherited shadows, the exhaustion, or the feeling of being lost. But the second wound is the judgment we layer on top of it. It is the part of the mind that says, I must clear this away right now, or I must analyze why I feel this way so that I can dispose of it. That secondary layer of judgment is what keeps you awake when the house is quiet. It is what makes your chest tight and your breath shallow. The monk was not tired because the leaves were hard to rake. He was tired because he was fighting the autumn. He was fighting the very nature of existence, which is designed to be shifting, seasonal, and unpredictable. When you try to force your inner life to be a static, pristine slate, you are essentially trying to stop the world from turning, or the trees from letting go of what they no longer need. True wisdom is realizing that the urgency you feel to fix your inner state is often just a form of fear wearing the mask of diligence. You fear that if you stop clearing, if you stop tidying your symptoms and your shortcomings, you will be seen as drifting, aimless, or insufficient. But the gardener's act of setting the rake down was a reminder that the earth already possessed a capacity for transformation you could never achieve on your own. By letting the leaves settle, she did not abandon the temple, she allowed it to become what it needed to be. She allowed the cycle to carry the temple, rather than forcing her own rigid standard upon it. This is what it means to let go, a phrase often used, but rarely felt in its fullness. Letting go does not mean you abandon your desire for clarity or your need for growth. It means you stop turning your self-observation into a weapon against your own peace. When you hold an identity too tightly, if you grip the edges of who you think you should be, until your knuckles turn white, your spirit aches, and you lose the ability to see the horizon. You become so focused on the few leaves you have gathered that you forget the entire forest. In the same way, when you grip the idea of how you should be feeling, you lose the ability to actually feel your life. You are supposed to be checking your internal courtyard for unacceptable emotions that you cannot inhabit the present moment. Mindfulness is not the act of forcing your mind to be empty, like a barren, swept patio. It is the ability to stand in the middle of your own experience, the falling leaves, the cold wind, the memories and the fears without feeling the need to hide them. It is the choice to look at the messiness of your own experience and say, yes, this is here and it is part of the season. Compassion, in this context, is the strength required to meet your own suffering without adding a second wound. It is looking at your internal restlessness, your need for answers, or your fear of changing, and instead of saying, I must sweep this away, you say, I see that you are struggling. You have been holding the rake for a long time. It is all right to set it down. This is not resignation. It is a profound, grounded form of courage. It takes more strength to sit with the seasonal nature of your life than it does to keep running in circles, trying to force a garden to stay in the middle of summer, when the winter is already calling. Notice how the tension shifts when you stop trying to manage the harvest of your own emotions. You are not a temple that needs to be scrubbed. You are not a case study that needs to be resolved. You are a process, fluid and moving, changing with the light just as the trees change with the hours of the day. The suffering you have been carrying is heavy, yes, but how much of that weight is simply the effort of holding the rake? How much of it is the fear of being seen as you are, with all your beautiful, untidied human mysteries? You do not need to solve the geography of your soul tonight. The leaves will still fall tomorrow, and that is not a disaster, it is simply the nature of the turning. The things you feel are not signs that you have failed. They are signs that you are living, that you are affected by the world, and that you are human. When we allow ourselves to be untidy, we finally make space for something else to enter, not more labor, not more striving, but a profound, resonant peace that comes from finally knowing you are safe, regardless of how many leaves are covering the floor. As you listen to these words, consider the possibility that your mind is not a nuisance to be corrected. It is a garden reflecting the vastness, and sometimes that reflection is clear, and sometimes it is obscured by the debris of your own striving. You do not need to rake the mirror to clear the view. You only need to stop trying to force it to show you a version of self already solved and already arrived. Tonight, we are going to explore how to sit in the presence of that garden, how to notice the falling leaves without calling them a failure, and how to find the quiet space between the seasons. You are already in the right place to begin this, not because you have done anything to earn it, but because the space is already yours. It has always been yours. You are simply remembering how to dwell in it, without the constant need to hide the signs of your own growth. There is a deep, ancient comfort in realizing you are allowed to be, just as you are, in this moment of deep, gathering silence. You have been working so hard to keep the path clear, to ensure that no one sees the evidence of your transition. But perhaps the transition is the very thing that will make you whole. What if the most authentic version of you is not the one who keeps everything neat, but the one who can stand in the middle of the debris and say, I am here, I am changing, and I am safe. This is not a state of apathy. It is a state of deep-rooted acceptance. It is the peace of someone who has finally realized that the temple was never yours to maintain in the first place. It was yours to inhabit. And look at how the room around you has started to respond. You aren't forcing the walls to be still. You aren't forcing the shadows to stop their movement. You are just allowing the environment to be what it is. And in doing so, you are finding that your body is naturally aligning with that stillness. This is the wisdom of the garden. The wisdom that recognizes that the falling is not a loss of order, but an invitation to rest. The leaves that fall are not forgotten. They return to the earth, and in that returning, they prepare the way for the buds that will eventually emerge. Your own struggles, your own periods of shedding, and your own times of feeling bare are all part of a larger architecture of self that you are only just beginning to trust. You don't need to be the one who decides when the winter starts. You only need to be the one who knows how to be warm while it lasts. So, let the rake be. Let the courtyard change its appearance. You don't have to explain why the garden looks different than it did a month ago. You don't have to apologize for the fact that you are no longer the same person you were during the height of your summer. You are exactly as you are, and that is sufficient. You have nothing left to prove to the temple, and you have nothing left to prove to the trees. You are finally, after so much striving, simply allowed to be. The stillness that is growing inside you now is not an absence of life, but a density of it. It is the quiet of the forest floor, dark and rich and full of the promise that comes when you stop fighting the cycle. You are moving deeper into this realization, deeper into the truth that you are not the one who must force the spring. The spring will come when it comes, and until then you have this beautiful, quiet, and necessary time of letting go. Take a deep, slow breath and feel that breath settle into your very bones. You are doing well, you are doing enough, and you are being held by the very earth you once thought you had to clean. If it feels right, allow your awareness to rest within the space of your own body, not as an observer checking for faults, but as a person finally sitting down after a long, arduous journey. You do not need to alter your posture or adjust your breathing. The body knows how to settle into the quiet if you simply grant it permission to do so. Perhaps you can feel the contact of your limbs against the sheets, a heavy, grounded sensation that connects you to the safety of this room. Let your awareness flow downward, from the crown of your head to the soles of your feet, letting each muscle acknowledge the presence of the night. There is no need for your muscles to hold a shape, no need to remain alert, no need to protect anything. Take a slow, gentle breath, noticing the cool air as it enters your nostrils and the subtle warmth as it leaves. There is nothing to achieve in this moment. You are not practicing to become better at peace. You are practicing to be present with the person who is already here, tired and searching. If it feels right, bring to your mind a single thought, one that has been recurring today, that feels like a leaf being caught in a rake. Perhaps it is a worry about a decision you haven't made, or the memory of a conversation that felt jagged, or an anticipation of tomorrow that feels like a frost on the garden. You do not need to fight this thought, and you certainly do not need to rewrite it. Simply name it. As if you were looking at a fallen leaf and observing its shape, you might silently whisper, "This is the sound of the iron rake," or "This is the feeling of trying to keep the garden perfectly bare." You are not the gardener anymore. You are simply noticing that a leaf has come to rest. What happens if you look at that thought, see the effort involved in trying to sweep it away, and then choose to do nothing with it? Imagine the heavy, rusted iron rake, the tool of your own rigid expectations, sitting on the stone path beside you. It is crafted with such weight, such historical pressure, yet it is currently unused. It is simply an object, like a stone or a piece of wood. The thought you are holding is like a leaf you have tried to trap within the teeth of the tool. What would it feel like to release the leaf back onto the slate path? If it feels right, visualize yourself setting the rake down. Let your hands be empty, resting softly in your lap, no longer tasked with holding the weight of your own perfection. There is no need to keep the courtyard immaculate. There is no need to prove that you can manage the seasons. The darkness around you is not a place to be feared. It is the natural, resting state of the world when the sun goes down. Notice how, as you stop trying to clear the ground, the mind begins to loosen its grip on the definitions it has created. You are not a set of swept paths, nor are you a history of gathered remnants. You are the space where the night, the breathing, and the thoughts occur, all at once, without hierarchy. If you find that your mind reaches for the rake again, if you feel the familiar pull to tidy or fix, acknowledge that impulse with kindness. It is a very old, very tired part of you that thinks it is protecting you from the messiness of being human. You might say to it, "I see you. You are trying to help me feel safe." Then with a soft exhale, let that impulse drift away. You are not abandoning your temple. You are discovering that you are already safe, even in the parts of your life that have collected debris. What if you allowed yourself to be, just for these moments, a person who does not have an immaculate courtyard? What if you leaned into the sensation of having scattered thoughts, not as a failure, but as a rest? Feel the weight of your body pressing into the bed. sinking into the soft, unraked reality of the present. You do not need to know the name of the wind that is blowing outside. You do not need to know the pattern of the fallen leaves. You only need to know that you are breathing, that you are warm, and that you are here. Even noticing that your mind is wandering is a form of profound rest. You do not need to snap your attention back to a focal point. You can simply allow the awareness to expand, like the forest floor itself. There is room for your worries, there is room for your fatigue, and there is room for the silence that underlies them all. If the thoughts return, observe them as if they were leaves drifting down from the canopy, coming to rest one by one, without you needing to scoop them up. You are the courtyard, not the one trying to clear it. If it feels right, place one hand over your heart. Feel the warmth of your own palm against your chest. This is the only temple that matters tonight, the steady, rhythmic beat of a heart that has walked so many days, through so many autumns, and so many miles of mental terrain. It does not need a rake to find its way. It is already doing exactly what it was designed to do. It is sustaining your life, breath by breath, beat by beat in the dark, without any input from your perfectionism. You might notice that as you stop reaching for the tools of management, the room around you feels a little more spacious. The silence is no longer an empty void you have to fill with explanations. It is a landscape that is already complete. You don't have to put anything on it. You don't have to leave any mark. You are simply resting in the presence of your own existence. If you feel a sense of unease as you stop the work, stay with that sensation for a moment. Do not push it away. Let it be another leaf on the path. It is not an enemy to be swept away. It is just another part of the garden. If you can let it sit there without needing to analyze it, you will find that the unease eventually changes its nature. It may grow quieter, or it may shift into something else, like a soft, blurring shadow at the end of the day. You have the choice in every moment to be either the keeper caught in the cycle of maintenance, or the observer who knows the beauty of the harvest. When you choose to be the observer, you stop adding the second wound of judgment. You stop blaming yourself for the fact that you are human, and that human lives are rarely solved, rarely perfectly tidy, and rarely predictable. You are safe enough to soften. You are safe enough to let the definitions of who you think you should be simply dissolve into the soil of the room. You have been holding the handle of the rake for so long, and your fingers are likely cramped and tired. But look, the rake is already gone. Your hand is empty. Your heart is quiet. There is no need to hurry. There is no need to arrive anywhere else. The courtyard is here. The dark, vast forest is surrounding it, silent and enduring. The wind is moving through the branches, just as it has for centuries, without any permission from your sweeping. You are part of that ancient, unhurried rhythm. You are part of the trees, the ground, and the falling leaves. As you continue to breathe, notice the sensation of letting go of the need to be pristine. What a relief it is to simply be here, without having to explain the debris of your own experiences. What a weight is lifted when you realize that nobody is waiting for your courtyard to be bare, and there is no temple demanding your labor. There is only the long, quiet night, the gentle support of the bed beneath you, and the slow, unfolding process of being alive. If you feel ready, allow yourself to sink a little deeper into the mattress. Let the bed hold the weight you have been carrying. You have been the one holding yourself up for so long. Let the gravity hold you now. Let the architecture of the building hold you. You are part of the world, not separate from it. You are allowed to be small. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to be, for this moment, entirely untended. The monk eventually learned that the most beautiful part of his life was the moment he set down his rusted iron tool and looked at the courtyard with his own unfiltered eyes. He realized that the garden wasn't something he had to polish for the gods. It was something he had to experience for himself. And tonight, you are doing the same. You are moving from the role of the keeper to the role of the guest. And in that transition, you will find the rest you have been searching for all along. Stay here in this softness. There is no rush to conclude, no rush to change. If the thoughts return, just observe them as if they were distant leaves passing over the paths of your own mind. They don't need you to rake them. They just need you to see them and let them be. You are the courtyard, not the keeper. You are the forest, not the debris. And the night is a wide, dark, gentle space, waiting to hold whatever you are ready to stop gathering. In a desolate, high mountain valley where the soil was thin and the winters lasted for months, there lived an elderly woman named Alara, who was renowned for the strange, singular devotion of her life. For 20 years, she had inhabited the ruins of a small, collapsed cottage, laboring every day to rebuild the walls using only the stones she salvaged from the foundation itself. She had lost her family in a great famine long ago, and she believed that if she could just restore the cottage to the exact state it had been in on the day they left, she would somehow reverse the tide of time. She was not living in the present, she was physically inhabiting a memory, her life a desperate, daily ritual of mortar and stone. Her hands were calloused, gnarled, and perpetually coated in gray dust. She worked with an intensity that bordered on the holy, moving rocks that were far too heavy for her frailty. Her breath coming in labored, rasping shudders. Every evening, as the sun dipped behind the jagged peaks, she would stand back and measure the wall against the mental image she kept locked behind her eyes. It was never quite right. There was always a gap, a slant, a slight deviation from the vision she carried. This failure would ignite a cold, sharp bitterness in her chest, a resentment toward the very stones that refused to conform to her will. One midwinter evening, a traveling hermit came upon the ruins. He was a man who carried nothing but a simple wooden bowl and a tattered, indigati'd cloak. He watched Alara for a long time as she struggled to lift a jagged piece of slate into place. She was trembling, her strength failing, the stone slipping from her grasp and tumbling back to the ground with a dull, final thud. She fell to her knees, her face buried in her dusty hands, the silence of the valley magnifying her quiet, broken sobs. The hermit did not offer to help her lift the stone. He did not tell her that her labor was noble. He walked over, sat down on a nearby boulder, and reached into his cloak, pulling out a small, dried pomegranate seed. It was withered, dull, and entirely unprepossessing. He placed it in the center of her calloused palm. "I am trying to rebuild," she said, her voice jagged with years of held-back grief. "If I can make it perfect, they will come back, the order will return. The loss will be erased." The hermit looked at the ruined wall, then at the desolate, frozen earth. "You are trying to build a shelter for people who no longer exist in a season that cannot sustain them," he said. "This seed has been kept in a dark pocket for a year. It has not grown. It has not rotted. It has stayed exactly the same. Do you think it is happy?" Alara stared at the seed. She had spent 2 decades trying to be exactly like it, suspended, unchanging, holding on to the shape of a life that had been dismantled by the storm of time. "If I change," she whispered, "if I let the cottage go, then everything they were, the laughter, the warmth, the life we had it, will be truly finally gone." "No," the hermit replied. "If you keep trying to force the stone to remember its place in a house that has already fallen, you are burying your own life under the rubble. The loss has already happened. The grief is the price of having loved them. But this life you are living now, this is not grief. This is a refusal to be born into your own present." He reached out and gently closed her fingers over the seed. "Go to the far side of the clearing, where the sun touches the earth for the first time in the morning. Bury this. Stop building the wall for one day, just for one day. See if you can bear to be a person who is not a builder of ghosts." Alara looked at the hermit, then at the mountain of stones she had fought so hard to master. The emotional challenge felt like a physical weight, a demand to surrender the only thing that had kept her upright through the long, lonely winters. She felt a surge of resistance, a hot, prickly panic that made her want to scream, to push the hermit away, to dive back into the frantic work of fitting the slate. The habit of her suffering was a deep, well-worn groove in her brain. To step out of it felt like stepping off a cliff. But she looked at the seed. She looked at her own hands, tired and gray with dust. She didn't become enlightened. In that moment, she didn't suddenly feel happy. She simply felt a quiet, exhausted curiosity. She stood up, her joints aching, and walked to the far side of the clearing. She didn't look back at the wall. She knelt in the frozen, unforgiving dirt, dug a small hole with her fingers, and placed the seed inside. She didn't pray. She didn't make a vow. She simply covered the seed with soil, patted it down, and for the first time in 20 years she stood up and didn't touch a single stone. She walked to the small stream that ran near the ruins, washed the dust from her hands, and sat on the bank, Watching the water move, she felt the hollow ache of the void where her purpose used to be, and she let it be hollow. She didn't try to fill it. She didn't try to rebuild it. She just sat with the discomfort of her own existence, the cold air hitting her face, the water swirling over the rocks. She didn't return to the wall the next day, nor the day after. She didn't tear the wall down. That would have been just another form of frantic labor, but she stopped adding to it. She began to notice the birds that came to perch on the stones, the way the lichen started to spread across the slate, and the way the valley changed when she wasn't constantly measuring it against the past. She started to cook simple meals. She started to watch the stars, not as reminders of what was lost, but as companions in the dark. The transformation was not that she forgot her family. The grief remained, but it was no longer a wall of stone. It was a river, moving, changing, and eventually nourishing. She realized that she had been using her grief as a way to prove she was still loyal to the past. But the hermit had shown her that the truest loyalty was to be a living, breathing, evolving human being. She stopped needing the world to be a monument to her loss and allowed it to be a garden for her endurance. When the spring finally arrived, the seed she had planted in the clearing pushed a thin, defiant shoot of green through the cold earth. She didn't celebrate it with a feast. She didn't call the neighbors. She simply walked out each morning to watch it. Her hands no longer gray with mortar. Her posture no longer bent under the weight of the rocks. She had learned the subtle, profound discipline of letting the season happen to her, rather than forcing her own season upon the world. This is the deeper layer of your own healing. You have been carrying the weight of your own ruined cottage, the past versions of yourself, the old roles you played, the identities that were lost when the circumstances of your life shifted. You are so terrified that if you stop building, if you stop tending to the ruins, you will lose the connection to what mattered. But you are not losing your past. You are simply giving your present permission to be built. You have been trying to make the present conform to the blueprints of a life that no longer exists, and this is why you feel so brittle, so tired, and so fundamentally unathome in your own skin. The hermit's question is for you tonight. Are you building a shelter for ghosts, or are you preparing a garden for yourself? You do not need to tear your life down, and you do not need to be magically perfect. But you can choose, just for tonight, to stop adding stones to the wall. You can choose to sit by the stream and wash your hands of the dust. You are allowed to feel the emptiness that follows the setting down of the work. That emptiness is not a failure. It is the necessary, fertile space where you can finally start to notice the growth that has been waiting for you, hidden beneath the rubble. There is a profound compassion in allowing yourself to be unfinished. There is a deep, quiet wisdom in trusting that the version of you that is coming next does not need to look like the version that came before. As you lie here, feel the sensation of the stones slipping from your grip. Let the weight of the identities you have been trying to force into place simply fall away. You don't have to be the one who knows how to be happy. You don't have to be the one who knows how to be resolved. You just have to be the one who is here, in the cold, in the dark, and in the quiet, watching the water move and waiting for the spring. You are not losing yourself by letting go. You are finally beginning to find the person who has been waiting in the ruins all along. This is the path of the heart, a slow, patient, and persistent movement toward the truth of your own life. And you are doing it. Every breath you take that does not demand perfection, every moment you sit with your own grief without trying to turn it into an achievement, is an act of deep, spiritual courage. You are becoming a person who can survive the fall, a person who can thrive in the clearing, and a person who is no longer afraid of the seasons. Rest now in the knowledge that the wall does not have to be finished for you to be whole. The garden is already growing, and you are exactly where you need to be to witness the first, small, and beautiful green of your own becoming. The scholar's obsessive need to calculate the horizon, to ensure every line was drawn with scientific precision, is a mirror for the way your own mind attempts to secure its safety through the machinery of analysis. You have likely spent much of your life in a state of high-frequency cognitive vigilance, operating under the quiet, persistent assumption that if you could only map the trajectory of your own anxieties, you could finally navigate around them without getting hurt. This is the mechanism of resistance. You believe that if you stop measuring the world, or if you stop cataloging your internal responses to it, you are abandoning your post. But this state of constant intellectualized watchfulness is not a sanctuary. It is a form of exile. By rehearsing the future or dissect the past, you bring the potential chaos of yesterday and tomorrow into the sanctuary of the present, effectively turning the quiet room of your own soul into a noisy, crowded, and stressful observatory. This is the central irony of our suffering. We believe that by obsessively turning our pain over in the mind, we are engaging in a process of transformation, when in reality, we are often just turning the pain into a permanent landmark. You have learned to define yourself by your capacity to worry, by your ability to foresee the next storm, or by your history of trying to outthink your own unhappiness. When you identify so completely with this analytical process, when you take your tendency to overmap and sew it into the very fabric of who you are, you create a character that is defined by its own struggles rather than by its own presence. It feels safer to be a person who is constantly working on themselves through the lens of mental critique than to be a person who is simply resting in the vast, unmeasured mystery of being alive. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that we must learn to distinguish between the first pain, the unavoidable reality of being human, the challenges we inherit, the losses we endure, and the moments of disorientation that come with living, and the second pain, which is the layer of interpretation our mind adds to that reality. The first pain is a force of nature, like the storm that lashes against the windows. It is real, it is heavy, and it is a part of the landscape. But the second pain is the brass sextant you press against your own chest, looking for the angle of your own failure. It is the self-judgment, the frantic need for approval, the shame that insists you are fundamentally broken because you feel the way you do, and the internal voice that demands you draw the perfect map before you are allowed to sleep. You cannot always control the first pain. Life will bring its own challenges, its own currents, and its own rough weather. But you can learn to stop feeding the second pain. You can learn to set the tools down. When you notice your mind beginning to spiral into a frantic attempt to understand why you feel heavy, or why you cannot seem to move past a particular worry, you are essentially reaching for the sextant again. You are taking a neutral, quiet moment and filling it with the noise of your own measurement. You are trying to plot the coordinates of your peace, when peace is not a place to be found on a grid. The wisdom of the cartographer is not that he stopped making maps, but that he stopped trying to be the one who had to hold the sky in place with his pen. He realized that the stars would move, the weather would shift, and the world would turn, whether or not he had recorded it correctly. This is the shift in relationship we are seeking, not the absence of difficulty, but a fundamental change in how we stand in the presence of it. Many of us go through our days wearing our intellect like a heavy, lead-lined coat, convinced that if we take it off, we will be vulnerable to the same storms that haunted our families or our pasts. We are so afraid of the uncertainty of the night that we prefer the familiar sharp ache of our own overthinking to the vast, open potential of simply not knowing what comes next. We crave validation from our own mental accomplishments, believing that if we can just understand our own anatomy of suffering, we will be transformed. But understanding is not the same as healing. You cannot map your way out of a feeling, you can only breathe your way through it. This is why Buddhist practice emphasizes the middle way, not the path of naive passivity, but the path of the traveler who knows that the map is a useful tool for a journey, but it is a terrible place to build a home. When you stop trying to fix your own humanity through the vehicle of mental analysis, something profound begins to shift. You stop being the cartographer who is terrified of the smudge on the parchment, and you start being the person who can look at the smudge and recognize it as part of the night. You become a person who can experience fear without being owned by it. You become a person who can remember the past without trying to relive it through a series of tactical diagrams. And most importantly, you become a person who can rest because you have finally stopped believing that the integrity of the universe depends on your ability to hold your breath and calculate the darkness. This is not a cold state of detachment, nor is it a sign that you have become unfeeling. It is a warm, deeply human state of acceptance. It is the recognition that the world is vast, that it carries the echoes of 1,000 stars, and that you are allowed to stand in the middle of that flow and not be swept away by the need to categorize it. You are solid. You are rooted. You are more than the sum of the logical traps that keep you awake in the middle of the night. You have the capacity to choose a different relationship with your own complexity. You don't have to turn every feeling into an investigation. You can treat your own inner life as a conversation, as a song, as a wind that passes through the canyon of your being and leaves you standing, firmer than you were before. But this requires the subtle, persistent discipline of noticing when you have reached for the sextant, when you feel that familiar, tight demand that you explain or solve a situation. Just stop. You don't have to act. You don't have to solve it. Just stop, breathe, and feel the weight of your own body against the surface beneath you. Return your awareness to the present moment, to the simple, unadorned fact of your own existence. This is the practice. It is not about reaching a destination where you never feel anxious again. It is about reaching a place where you are no longer at war with your own heart. And that place is not somewhere far off in the future, constructed by your intellectual diagrams. That place is right here, beneath the noise, in the quiet, solid reality of your own body. Notice how the air in the room feels a little softer now, as if the boundaries of your own concern have started to lose their rigidity. You are doing something very deep tonight. You are dismantling the observatory of your own worry, instrument by instrument, map by map, and finding that you are not falling. You are simply arriving. You are arriving at a place where you can finally stop acting as the judge of your own experience. The diagrams of the past are just diagrams, and the anxieties of the future are just possibilities. But this moment, this breath, this weight, this is real. This is your life, and it is safe to be here. It is safe to stop trying to earn your place in the world by the strength of your analysis. You already have a place. You already belong. And the night is here to remind you that you are allowed to rest. The silence that now fills your room is not empty. It is heavy with the relief of someone who has stopped running. You can feel that same silence here, beneath the sheets, beneath the noise of the day, beneath the thoughts that try to tell you that you are not enough. You are here. You are exactly as you are. And that is enough. You don't have to carry the weight of those who came before you. You don't have to map the gaps of their lives with your own suffering. You are the traveler, and the traveler is allowed to simply sit in the darkness, witnessing the sky, and staying right where they are. You might wonder how this wisdom, born in the quiet corners of a mountain temple, can survive the friction of your everyday life. It is easy to find clarity in the stillness of the night, but the real practice begins tomorrow, in the sudden interruptions and the small, familiar pressures that make you feel as though you must be something other than you are. The wisdom of the garden is not meant to be kept in a cloister. It is meant to walk with you into the grocery store, into the office, and into the spaces where you feel most vulnerable. Consider those moments when you are lying awake at night, your phone glowing in the dark, refreshing a feed, or waiting for a message that you hope will provide some sense of certainty. In those moments, you are essentially back in the courtyard, frantically clutching the rake, desperate to clear away the debris of your own insecurity so that you can feel worthy of rest. You are not waiting for a text. You are waiting for a sign that your existence is valid. But the anxiety you feel while waiting is just the echo of your own need to control the season. It is the sound of you trying to keep the leaves from falling, trying to force the current of your life to be static. Next time you find yourself gripped by that need to check and recheck, pause for one heartbeat. Notice the tension in your hands as you hold the device. You are not required to put the phone away forever, but you are invited to recognize that you are currently trying to rake a garden that is already in transition. Simply naming the act "I am currently trying to clear away my feelings because I am afraid of the change" is the first, most powerful step towards setting down the iron tool. Or think about those times in your day when you are smiling and nodding at someone, even though inside you feel exhausted, fragmented, or heavy. You feel as though you are obligated to maintain the image of the person who has it all figured out, the one who is constantly making progress on their internal path. You fear that if you show the slightest tremor, the entire garden will be seen as neglected. and others will see you as you fear you are unfinished, unsure, or lost. But consider the freedom of acknowledging, just to yourself, that you are currently a traveler who does not know the way. When you stop pretending, you do not lose your integrity, you gain a profound, quiet strength. You can care deeply about the people in your life without having to grip the rake so tightly that your own palms ache. You can listen, you can respond, and you can participate without the constant, draining labor of bracing yourself against the unpredictability of every interaction. When you make a mistake, and you will, because you are human, notice if your first instinct is to immediately reach for the rake of self-judgment. We are taught that shame is a useful tool, that if we scrub our own internal courtyard enough, we will somehow learn to be better. But shame is not a gardener, it is a frost. It does not help you grow. It just keeps you trapped in the same loop of replaying what you should have done differently. The next time a mistake triggers that spiral of self-reproach, remember the monk. Remind yourself, this is not a sign of failure. This is simply the sound of the world changing. You do not need to rewrite your history to prove you are worthy. You do not need to hide your past. You only need to see it, accept that it exists as part of the terrain you have already crossed, and continue with the work of living. The pressure to be ahead in life is perhaps the most persistent illusion of all. We compare our internal sense of confusion to the external display of someone else's life, and we conclude that we are failing to keep pace. But you are not behind. You are not on a track that requires you to reach a specific bloom by a certain hour. You are a person walking through a garden, and your path is your own. Every season has its purpose. Your current season of feeling heavy, or uncertain, or simply tired, is not an interruption of your life, it is a vital part of the landscape. To fight it is to fight the nature of your own existence. You may also find yourself trying to control the people around you, your partner, your children, your colleagues, because you fear that if they do not behave in a predictable way, the courtyard of your life will be ruined. This is a common, understandable response to the fear of uncertainty. But you are not the director of their journey. You are not even the director of your own journey in the way you imagine. You are a participant, a witness, a presence. When you stop trying to manage the outcome of every interaction, you open the door to genuine connection. You allow the other person to be a mystery, and you allow yourself to be a person who can hold that mystery without needing to solve it. Even in the smallest actions, like the moment before you answer an email or respond to a difficult question, there is an opening for this wisdom. Most of our suffering comes from the impulsive, automatic way we react to the world, based on the fear that if we are not quick or perfect or correct, we will be vulnerable. Taking a single, conscious breath before you react is a form of profound discipline. It is a way of setting the rake on the damp grass. That one breath creates a space where you can choose, rather than just repeat the old, tired patterns of your own mental sweeping. It is the difference between being a slave to the need to be tidy and being a person who is intentionally participating in their own life. You do not need to earn your rest by being perfect, and you do not need to prove your worth by ensuring your internal garden is perfectly barren. The exhaustion you feel is the result of trying to stop the leaves from falling, trying to force your own life to be a static, unchanging temple. You are permitted to be exactly as you are tonight. You are allowed to leave the worries unresolved, the past unfixed, and the leaves where they lie. You are not a scientific record of your own labor. You are a human being who has been working very hard, and you have every right to lean back, to look at the clearing, and to finally truly let go of the tools. The modern world asks you to be a permanent, unmoving monument of efficiency, but the heart asks for nothing more than the permission to be resonant. You can be disciplined in your work. You can be caring toward others, and you can be mindful of your own growth, all without having to hold your breath to keep the garden quiet. You are safe enough to soften. You are safe enough to be seen with your history, your debris, and your natural humanness. This is not the end of your journey. It is the beginning of a life where you are finally present for the beauty that was there all along. Underneath all the fear, in the cool, solid, and enduring reality of your own body, you are already exactly where you need to be, and you have nothing left to prove to anyone. least of all to the version of yourself that thought it had to carry an iron rake to deserve peace. The silence that now fills your room is not empty. It is heavy with the relief of someone who has stopped raking. You can feel that same silence here, beneath the sheets, beneath the noise of the day, beneath the thoughts that try to tell you that you are not enough. You are here. You are exactly as you are. And that is enough. You don't have to carry the weight of those who came before you. You don't have to clear the gaps of their lives with your own striving. You are the traveler, and the traveler is allowed to simply sit in the courtyard, witnessing the trees and staying right where they are. You have finished the work of the day, and now the garden is asking you for nothing more than your presence. Take one more deep, slow breath and feel that breath settle into your very bones, grounding you in the stillness that has been waiting for you all along. The autumn clearing has deepened, the air turning soft and still as the garden yields to the inevitable pull of the frost. The rusted iron rake, that heavy anchor of your striving, lies forgotten beneath a thin blanket of fallen leaves, its long handle cold and motionless against the earth. You have walked a long way through this forest of your own past, clutching the memories you were so afraid to lose, believing that your worth was measured by how neatly you could pile the debris of your life. But look at how the ground receives it all, without judgment, without conditions, without needing to make sense of what has passed. The garden does not ask for order. It asks only for the quiet courage to let the seasons turn. Your body is growing heavy now, sinking into the soft, welcoming depths of the mattress, as if you were finally returning to the soil after a long, vertical climb. Every muscle, once pulled taut by the expectation of having to tend to the temple grounds, is unraveling. Feel the heat of the day cooling. Feel the tight lines of your face smoothing out, and let the breath move through you not as a labor but as a tide. You are not the keeper of the courtyard anymore. You are simply the one who is breathing, the one who is resting, the one who is finally blissfully untended. The silence in the room is deepening, turning from a quiet pause into a vast oceanic stillness. You can hear the rhythm of your own heart, slow and steady, beating like a quiet drum in the center of the dark. It is the only tempo that matters now. There is no urgency to reach a new harvest, no need to verify your progress, and no requirement to prove that you have understood the transformation. You are simply a person, lying in the dark, allowed to exist without definition. The leaves of your thoughts, the anxieties, the plans, the regrets are drifting out of view, settling into the earth until they are nothing but rich, dark compost for the future you do not need to name tonight. Let the teaching of the damp, cooling earth rest in the marrow of your bones. You do not need to build the garden, you only need to trust the soil that holds your weight. You do not need to calculate the frost, you only need to feel the calm that follows the fall. You have spent so long standing in the courtyard, rake in hand, trying to preserve a season that has already surrendered its color. But tonight, you are being invited to step out of the labor and simply look at the clearing. You don't need to know the name of a single leaf to be nourished by the cycle. You don't need to explain the changes to be held by the night. You are enough, just as you are, unswept and perfectly, profoundly becoming. As you drift closer to the edge of sleep, feel the way the boundaries of your own concern are blurring. The sharp, rigid lines of your self-critique are dissolving, turning back into the soft, fluid, and welcoming darkness of the season. You are not a scientific record of your past mistakes, and you are not a diagram of your future fears. You are a living, breathing, resting human being, and the earth is offering you a place to lay your head. Let the weight of the day fall away. Let the need to organize the remnants of your identity fall away. You have traveled far enough. You have carried the heavy tools of your perfectionism through enough long, weary hours. The courtyard is closed. The raking is finished. You are safe. The night is a wide, dark, gentle space that asks nothing of you, expects nothing from you, and offers you everything you have been looking for: the simple, unadorned peace of someone who has finally stopped fighting the wind. Your breath is quiet, your heart is slow, and the world is holding you steady. There is no rush to wake, no rush to be anyone other than the person lying here, drifting, fading, and letting go. Let the last bits of tension leave your fingers. Let the last flicker of mental activity dissolve into the vast, silent field of the clearing. When you wake, the sun will rise on a world that is already turning, and you will find your own way, not because you have a tidy path, but because you will know how to walk the messiness with a soft and open heart. But for now, just drift. Let the darkness take you, let the stillness hold you, and let the quiet, unraked landscape of your own peace surround you completely. You have come to the end of the labor, and there is nothing left to do but to close your eyes, breathe into the deep, welcoming silence, and finally, truly, let the garden bloom in its own time. If the person you were yesterday has already fallen like a leaf to the forest floor, what new growth might be waiting for you in the quiet of the coming spring?